Welcome to project number 1. Now, on project number 1, we're going to make this site called Playground, which is a brand new digital agency that's coming very soon. Now, of course, this isn't actually a real digital agency. This is a playground for us to play around with type. Now, what we're going to do on this project, as you can see here, is we're going to add some animation to this. So how do we get to this point of adding animation to some web type? Well, obviously the first thing we need to do is make this website. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to add HTML and CSS to get a structure that looks like this page. Next, what we'll talk about is how we add things like Google fonts and also how to add in custom fonts in here as well. Next, we'll talk about hover states and how we stretch fonts and do this kind of movement. But then what we'll talk about is how to add in CSS animation so we can add this kind of constant loop, as you can see up here in the corner. And then later on, towards the end of the project, we'll start to talk about variable typefaces. Now, what are those? We'll come to that a little bit later. Now, the first thing we need to do is talk about how to make this website from scratch. Now, if this is your first ever website, don't worry, we'll talk about HTML and CSS. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is actually start by setting up our project. Now, the first thing is I'm going to go to editor.superhi.com. And what I can do is log in using my SuperHi login details. If you do know how to code already and you want to use a different editor, that's totally fine. Same kind of principles apply. Here, everything's online. You can get things like help and support in the editor as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a brand new project from scratch. I'm going to call this one, unsurprisingly, Playground Agency, if I spell that correctly. And what we're going to do is create a brand new project, and this is going to give us some framework to start with. We have some HTML, and we have some style sheets in here. Now, if you do want help with any of your projects, we can quickly go to preview and see this in the editor. So you can see here, this is exactly what we have reflected up here. We'll talk about HTML and CSS a little bit later. But if you do want help, you can click down here. This is your draft URL that you can see here. You also have a kind of final URL here. If you want to freeze this in time, just click Publish Changes, and that kind of freezes it where it currently is. So here I can send this URL to help and support and my friends if they want to look at this website too. And this is kind of how we get online. So here is where our project's going to live. Mine's at playground-agency-1.superhi.com. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the HTML structure of this page. How do we set it up to look something like this?